Is cyber warfare already happening? This is something I want to talk about, and I want to bring up some recent events that have happened and kind of air this out there, because this is something that I think everybody needs to keep a really close eye on. The reality is, moving forward in the 21st century, cyber warfare is a new front that we will be seeing, and as a prepper, it's something you need to understand what impacts it can have on you, and it's something that you really need to be prepared for. Recently, we've seen several major cyber attacks within the U.S. A couple examples that I've noticed is a regional hospital to me has actually had their systems hacked, and they've been down right now for over a week. It's to a point where they can't access patient medical records. Hospital staff can't communicate through internal systems. It's just created a major headache for these guys. And yeah, honestly, they don't seem to really know where this originated from. From what I've noticed, it sounds like this isn't kind of a unique circumstance at any point right now. I've heard of people in other regions kind of seeing similar things going on. So I'm thinking it's probably something a little bit more wide scale. It could even be an actor from a nation, say, as Russia. And I do bring that up because of a couple other bullet points I'm going to hit later on down here in this conversation over some things Russia's done lately. Another thing that happened is about the same time that actually this hospital system was attacked locally in the U.S., there are several, at least in my area, local and even regional law enforcement agencies that were actually having issues. It got to a point where they couldn't do any reporting or tickets via computers, and their dispatch systems were completely down. So that's something I want to bring up there. These attacks are happening, and they're not isolated incidents. You know, some additional incidents that have happened just within the last couple of weeks is we saw over in India, one of their major power providers, Tata Power, they actually were attacked. They were supposedly attacked by a Chinese-backed entity. That's at least what the rumors are. But they had attacks on their systems. They had customer information attacked, and they've been having to take extra precautions. The Russian hacker group Killnet conducted a DOS attack on several major U.S. airports within the last week or so, blocking web traffic to these airports' websites. That's since been resolved, but that was another one that actually made the news recently. We also saw within the last day or so, North Korean hackers actually targeted Japanese cryptocurrency exchanges. Now, there's not a lot of details that have come out about this yet, besides the fact that these exchanges actually did have data stolen, and they also had cryptocurrency stolen by these North Korean hackers. It's an undisclosed amount, so I really honestly couldn't even take a guess at how much was stolen. But I'd say anytime you throw an undisclosed amount, that means those hackers got away with probably quite a bit. Another thing that recently also happened in this realm was over this past weekend, Bulgaria had major cyber attacks going against government ran infrastructures from the technical field. So we saw like their interior ministry, their defense ministry, and several other major government entities have their virtual portals attacked. And at one point, from my understanding, they were completely down. Those are also suspected attacks from Russia. This is something we've been seeing trending a lot with Russia. This is why I'm bringing this up and talking about it, just because it's been out there so much. Keep in mind as well, back at the beginning of the Ukraine-Russia conflict earlier this year, we actually saw Russia initiate several cyber attacks against the Ukrainian government as well. So it's been a trend with Russia. There's nothing that wouldn't lead me to believe that we're going to keep seeing these attacks or see these become more widespread. Another thing that's come out recently is that intelligence agencies, specifically in the European Union, actually have a lot of concern about Russia going after infrastructure targets. So we saw, for example, regardless of who did it, the attack on the Nord Stream pipeline, and that was a physical attack. But what's even more concerning to people over in Europe right now regarding this and this cyber warfare that seems to be going on is the simple fact that most power grids, most natural gas and utility grids, they are linked in electronically. There's a lot of controls that are actually able to be manipulated through the internet. You know, this is something that you don't see really touched on too much, but it's a really big concern because these systems, typically from my experience being government-run systems, they're typically a little antiquated. They don't have the best cybersecurity out there. And that's something that we really need to be worried about. Especially if you're over in Europe right now, you should be concerned because Russia could easily, at the rate they're going, get into these systems, and they could cause additional problems with the power grid and with the natural gas supplies over there, compounding the already struggling situation that we're seeing. So that's something I would definitely make sure you're watching as well. And keep in mind, I know we've mostly touched here on some stuff going on in the US and going on over in Europe, but these aren't uncommon. In Australia right now, we've actually seen executives come out and state that they are trying to fight against having to release compromising cyber attacks on their companies. They're wanting to just ignore those situations and throw them under the rug, but that's something to keep a watch out as well, especially if you're over there in Australia, because they're not wanting to tell you when your information's been compromised or when their systems are being compromised. So I guess we'll see how that pans out over there. And then as well, over here recently, back in August, when we had the Speaker of the House from the U.S. visit Taiwan, we also saw Chinese cyber attacks going against Taiwanese targets. So we did see stuff like the Taiwanese presidential website get hacked. You know, and again, we haven't touched on it too much, but China is bigger in this realm probably than Russia. You know, and that's why I'm bringing this up, is cyber warfare is something we're going to see more of. And I'm thinking we're starting to kind of see the beginning of this already, because we do have so many colossal powers out there, and we do have this struggle going on a global dynamic, that it's something to be concerned about. And I think we're going to see it more due to that fact. In the end, nobody wants to go to a physical war. You'll hear that. That's what the news will talk about. That's what you'll hear some other guys talk about on here. You can find YouTube videos of it everywhere. But the reality is, major powers understand that nobody wins when you go into an all-out armed conflict. We just live in too much of an intertwined society where it's not something that anybody really wants to have happen. But they still do want to win. And that's where the cyber warfare comes in. That's where, again, you'll see more attacks on infrastructure, financial institutions. You know, anything that's connected to the internet has that potential for this cyber warfare to impact it. So overall, my major thoughts on this that I want to share is that it's something you need to be prepared for. So as a prepper, keep in mind that these institutions are vulnerable. We've seen these institutions get attacked. We will see this continue on a more wider scale, in my opinion. You know, and just look around. Just keep your eyes out. Just keep looking around, because you will see this more. And, you know, while there's not a lot you can do on a overall level to protect this, there is some stuff you can do on a personal level. The biggest things you can do on that personal level is going to be ensuring that you keep up with your preps. You just keep moving along and you get your preps in order. Just do that. Keep track of what you have, and that's going to help insulate you if something happens. Another thing that I want you to keep in mind is avoid putting all your eggs in one basket. I know with the electronic banking and everything, it's very easy and convenient now to not even have cash, but you need to make sure that you have ways to pay for things if your financial institution's compromised. So for example, keep cash on hand. Have your money spread out over several institutions, so if one of them does get compromised in some sort of attack like this, it's not completely locked away, because the reality is, if you have a major institution out there get compromised and they're sitting over here in ruins trying to scrub back what got deleted or stolen, it could take a while. So even if you eventually have this happen and you get your money back because it got stolen in some sort of cyber attack by a hacking group, you don't want to have to wait for that and struggle. So keep your stuff spread out. Keep physical cash on hand if you can. And kind of a tip that I have for you as well, and this is a little bit more of a personal level, but when you're dealing especially with financial stuff, be cautious on who you're sharing it with, and use two-factor authentication. Almost every place out there anymore has it. So on that personal level, a way you can help protect your information that isn't going to necessarily come into play with these, but just in general is going to be using two-factor authentication. So that's just what I wanted to touch on. You know, I know there's a lot of other ones out there that have happened cyber attack wise recently that really I think is going into this more cyber warfare spectrum. If you've heard of any specific instances, if you've seen local agencies and government entities or even companies falling victim to these, post it down in the comments below. We want to hear what you guys are being seeing out there as well. Don't hesitate to share it with us. Most of all though, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you don't mind, but stay prepared and stay safe.